This is another session about how to mix live music. Thanks for joining me again. We've set input gains, high-pass filters, EQs, and pan. Now it's time to focus on the faders, how to balance the sound of a band, and keep listening and tweaking as the performance progresses. By the way, I know we haven't yet talked about aux buses and monitor mixes for the performers, but don't worry, that will be in the next chapter. If you look at the scale printed beside the faders, you'll notice that it's not linear. As the fader pushes up, the distance between each 10 dB line becomes greater until you reach minus 10 dB in the center position. From then on, the scale is linear. So this is the region where we should be operating during a performance, between plus 10 and minus 10. When you bear in mind that a 6 dB increase will double the sound pressure level of a channel, you don't want to be making fine adjustments in the lower half of the fader scale. So, with a master fader at a safe low level, raise the input faders to 0 dB. Then bring the master fader back up for a good listening level. Take a listen to the whole mix while the band plays. Can you hear every voice and instrument well enough? Do they all blend well? If some channels are too quiet, don't increase their fader level at this point. Reduce the other faders a little bit instead. Keep your eye on the stereo master level meters. They mustn't reach the red peak. If they do, the level of some channels will need to be reduced. If you find the need to reduce a fader level below minus 10 dB, then consider to decrease its input gain by 10 dB and raise the fader back up. This is easier on the TF mixer, where the gain is adjusted in exactly 1 dB steps. Another obvious advantage of TF is that the faders are 100 mm rather than 60, allowing smoother level adjustment and fine tuning. If you find there's only one channel that's too quiet, and it's awkward to reduce 23 faders rather than raise just one, then check the quiet channel's input level. If its gain can be safely raised without lighting the red indicators, that will avoid the need to raise the fader much above 0 dB. You see, it's good to keep that buffer between 0 and plus 10 in case a channel needs to be temporarily boosted during a solo or quiet passage of music. A live music performance is a constantly changing thing. The perfect position for the faders in one moment will not be ideal for the next song, or even for the next verse or chorus. The key to making a good mix is to keep listening and watching. A good band will vary their arrangements for each verse, chorus, bridge, and so on. You need to watch, listen, and adapt. Listen for the small changes to the keyboard or guitar parts and adjust accordingly. Maybe the verse requires the keyboard to be more prominent, and the chorus relies more on the guitar to supply the energy. Maybe backing vocals need to be pushed louder during a bridge, and a saxophone fader pushed up for a solo. Keep your eyes on the stage. If you see a musician doing something interesting but can't hear it, then adjust the faders. Do all the adjustments in steady and small steps. Reevaluate the mix balance every time the music changes between verse, chorus, bridge, or instrumental. Keep a constant ear open for feedback, which is most likely on the vocal mics or quiet acoustic instrument mics. If you start to hear a howl or a squeal, identify the source by using PFL or Q in your headphones. And bring the fader down a few dB for a few seconds until the danger is past. Don't mix with headphones on. Try to experience what the audience is hearing. Just use headphones to identify the problems with individual channels, such as feedback or distortion, or if some other noise develops. Now let's talk about fader groups. You see on MGP32X the 4 grey faders on the right side of the console. And on TF series, you'll see there's a group fader layer accessed by pressing the 2 input fader bank keys. The point of these is to use just 1 or 2 faders to adjust the level for a large group of channels all at the same time. For example, assign all drum, bass, guitar and keyboard channels to one group, and all vocal and solo instruments to another group. Then it will be easy to adjust how the core of the band blends with the singers and the soloists. Also, it makes it easy to switch off the sound from many channels at once if they're not needed for a portion of the event. Here's how to make a group on MGP32X. For the band channels, push down the 1-2 switch and push up the ST switch. For the vocal and solo channels, push down the 3-4 switch and push up the ST switch. For the group channels, remove the faders up to 0 dB, push down the ST switch and adjust their pan controls. So you've got hard left for 1 and 3, hard right for 2 and 4. When they're switched on, the faders are up, they are ready. Moving faders 1 and 2 together will change the level of all the band channels. Now, the signal is flowing from input channels to group channels, and from the groups to the stereo master. On the TF series, there's extra flexibility with 8 groups. And they are digitally controlling the levels of the other channels, hence the name DCA, digitally controlled amplifier. So we don't need to be concerned about them being mono or stereo, or with additional routing and panning. The status of the input channels will remain. We just need to add channels to groups, and each channel can be in more than one group, so you can be creative with your assignments. For example, have DCA 1 for all your drum mics, DCA 2 for bass and guitars, DCA 3 for keyboards, then DCA 4 for all the band channels together. And you still have 4 additional DCAs free for other channel combinations. Select the DCA channel, then choose on the touchscreen which members it will have. And look, when you have selected the DCA members, they are shown on the left side. So it's a great way to handle your mix. All the groups and the members of the selected group on the same fader layer. We call this DCA rollout. It's a favorite way of working for many professional sound engineers. With fader groups, it's easy to respond with the music. You can emphasize the dynamics of the band. If you sense a big build, you can push the band group a little. Then pull it down for the next section. If there's an a cappella section, push the vocal group. If there's a long drum solo, you know what to do. Turn the group off. Only joking. You just make sure you don't end up pushing everything way above 0. To keep the output level under control, try to never have all the fader groups above 0 at the same time. Keep an eye on the main stereo level meter. You should expect to see it bouncing around in the orange zone for much of the time. Between 0 and +10 on the MGP analog mixer, or between -20 and -9 on TF series. Just avoid ever lighting up the top red indicator. Learn to flow with the music. Bring the band to life. Make it more involving for the audience. But actually, one key to making a good sound for the audience is to first make a good sound for the band. That's what we're going to talk about in the next session. Using aux buses to make a monitor or foldback mix. See you again soon.